Dear President of Slovenia, Your Excellency Borut Pahor, Dear Prime Minister of Slovenia, Your Excellency Janez Janša, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. Because of the unprecedented global coronavirus pandemic, we are all living with much uncertainty. This is why this year's Bled Strategic Forum comes at a very important time. The world needs to better understand and to address the far-reaching consequences of this crisis. I would like to congratulate the organizers of the forum and thank the wonderful Slovenian hosts for bringing together so many leaders and decision makers from Central and Southeastern Europe. We are all still learning every day, but I hope very much that one lesson from this crisis we have already learned. And this lesson is we need more solidarity. Solidarity within societies and solidarity among societies. Solidarity is at the heart of the Olympic Games, which unite humankind in all our diversity. In these extremely uncertain and fragile times, the Olympic values of excellence, friendship, respect, and solidarity can give all of us good guidance. Countries around the world are starting the long journey of recovery from the pandemic. Sport is ready to contribute to rebuild a more human-centered and a more inclusive society. Sport and physical activity contribute directly to physical and mental health. Sport can save lives. We have seen this over the last few months, in particular in times of lockdown, social distancing, and uncertainty. This is why the recent Stay Strong, Stay Active, Stay Healthy campaign of the IOC resonated so strongly, with 500 million people being introduced to this campaign throughout the world's biggest digital Olympic workout. Sport has also a great social significance by being the glue which bonds communities together. Sport promotes inclusive societies because all too often sport is the only activity that unites people regardless of their social, political, religious, or cultural background. Such inclusivity is even more important in otherwise deeply divided societies. Sport plays a significant economic role. It creates jobs, generating business activity. In Europe, for example, a recent study showed that sport contributes more than 2% to GDP, a contribution which makes sports economically more important than a number of more traditional economic sectors. In summary, sport is contributing to the recovery from the crisis on the health, the social, and the economic side. For all these reasons, the IOC calls on the governments of the world to include sport in their post-corona support programs. In this respect, it is also important to emphasize that sport can only make this contribution to society if the specific solidarity-based model of sport is supported by the public authorities. This is why we all together need to strengthen the European sport model and its robust solidarity funding mechanisms especially as we look to the recovery from this crisis. As you discuss the many challenges and opportunities of the post-corona world, I hope that you will take this important role of sport into consideration. The post-corona world will need sport and the Olympic values of excellence, friendship, respect, and solidarity. We are ready to make our contribution. In this Olympic spirit, I wish you fruitful discussions and a successful forum in wonderful Slovenia.
Thank you very much to the President of International Olympic Committee. And now we will start with the leaders panel. And at the beginning, we will see a short video which was prepared in collaboration with our partner, Pristop. Thank you.
Let's start by taking a few moments to reflect on the world we live in. This year, the world has been hit by a health emergency of unprecedented proportions. To a certain degree, COVID-19 has disrupted almost every aspect of international relations and our lives. It is therefore paramount that we do not allow ourselves to forget that we are inextricably interwoven, connected by the sheer acts of endurance and cooperation. We can point to several instances where cooperation has broken down barriers and created bridges, bolstering our global bonds despite the dire situation we find ourselves in. Solidarity, as well as sharing knowledge and assisting each other, helped prevent catastrophic scenarios in many countries that were able to successfully curb infection rates. By setting aside their differences, leaders of the EU member states with diverse interests came together to reach a historic agreement on the COVID-19 recovery plan. The agreement serves as a cornerstone in revitalizing the EU and its economy in the post-pandemic era. At the same time, cohesion remains the building block of the recovery and the Union. If anything, we have learned to listen to the world around us and receive cues where we once only heard rumblings. So, as the ocean sways, we must sway with it. That is why deepening our cross-continental and transatlantic cooperation is essential in our fight against the virus and its consequences. Cooperation between neighbours safeguards our mutual interest, reinforces solidarity as the guiding principle of the European idea, and erases the dividing lines that impede us from reaching our common goals. All this reflects a resolute dedication to our common values, the principles of democracy, transparency, and the rule of law. It reflects a future where we achieve things together, a community working as one.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Nick Gowing.
Good morning, everybody. It's nice to be back here at the Bled Strategic Forum. When I was last here a couple of years ago, I was warning leaders to think the unthinkable. Look where we are today. What we're going to be doing in the leaders session for the next 80 minutes or so is considering the future of Europe after Brexit, that's in the title, and after the COVID-19 pandemic. But I'd put to you, this is going to be about living with COVID as opposed to after. So that needs to frame our thinking as well. Do please contribute your thoughts. I'd like you to hear from you digitally as much as physically as well. Digitally is the way to communicate with me. I'd also like to invite the 6 Prime Ministers, the President, to join me up on the platform while I give a couple of opening remarks. And we're going to be joined virtually as well by Kristalina Georgieva, who's the Managing Director of the IMF. She's joining us from Sofia. And also by the Prime Minister of Italy, Giuseppe Conte, who's joining us from Rome. So welcome to you all. Let me invite the Prime Ministers and Presidents to come up. Your seats are well identified here. We are I want to reinforce the alerts that we've heard already from so many of the speakers. The global geostrategic stability we've long taken for granted is in shock. Stability was already unraveling before COVID-19. The pandemic then accelerated huge societal changes. It exposed global vulnerabilities that were already threatening the global multilateral system. As Josep Borrell has said, the High Representative, in a great piece opening in the Bled Strategic Times, warning of Europe's great responsibility in this new era. The European Union was pretty cautious to accept the inevitability and the awfulness of what was unraveling. And this exposed new fault lines. And what we want to get to in the next 80 or 90 minutes is to understand where those fault lines are at the moment. They were redefined significantly by national interests. What nations saw as the need to protect their country from the medical and economic ravages of COVID-19. Through all of this, the question for this morning: how can the EU remain a strong, democratic, transparent and integrated union of 27 nations committed to the same goals? Or are those economic and medical ravages of COVID-19 shredding the unity and the solidarity that every member nation is formally signed up to, committed to? So that's the basis of the next 80 minutes or so. Let me just give you an idea of what we're going to do. We, in a moment, will hear from each of the speakers in a very short icebreaker, literally an icebreaker, 45 seconds. I want to hear from them, their view very quickly about where Europe is at the moment. So that means interventions from here and from Italy as well. And then we will have 10 minutes with Madame Georgieva to highlight the economic realities we're all facing, not just in Europe, but globally as well. I'll then be doing a 5-minute interview with each of the leaders behind me and also Mr. Conte in Italy. And then in the last 25, 30 minutes, we'll have open discussion, bringing together each of the remarks which we've heard from the leaders here. That's why I want your comments as well. I'm actually going to be sitting here with my back to you because I want to be able to see who's speaking and also to be able to see who's speaking down the line. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you all. But what I'd like to do, first of all, is go to the Prime Minister of Croatia, first of all, to ask you in 45 seconds what your view is about you had the presidency for 6 months earlier this year. How was it handling it? 45 seconds, please, only. The real difficulties and challenges you faced.
Thank you very much. Greetings to everyone, and thanks to Janez and the entire Slovenian team for organizing another Bled Forum. It was very tough. As you said, unprecedented. We started immediately on the 28th of January to initiate all the emergency proceedings at the EU side to manage this health, but later on, I would say, crisis in absolutely every aspect of the functioning. We basically had a virtual presidency as of 10th of March, also unprecedented in the entire history of the European Union. What we managed was to well coordinate the initial activities to better be putting into focus the entire health domain, which normally is not the domain at the EU level.
What do you think? Could you have done more?
I think we did the maximum possible at the time. What was missing was the physical meetings between the leaders, and once we met, once the, let's say, conditions were ripe, I think the fact that in July we accepted the multi-annual financial framework as well as the EU Next Generation shows the strength of the common response.
Thank you for the moment. Let me now go to Slovenia. You're going to be the presidency from July next year. Prime Minister, what do you want in place when you take over? In other words, what has got to be done in the next 9 months? What's the challenge for all of you here?
First of all, thank you to everybody for coming here at Bled at this very important moment. Congratulations to Andrej, because Croatian presidency was this first presidency after the membership, and I cannot imagine more challenges coming together within 6 months, so you did it well. Thank you. For our presidency next year, we all know that this will be, we hope so, post-COVID era. So we will still dealing with how to fix the effects or the consequences of the epidemic. And this will be surely post-Brexit era. So this will be time when Europe is trying to find new balances, new balance of powers. We all know we need it very much, and I see especially Central Europe as a key player in this game. We'll also deal with the economic consequences of the epidemic, thanks God, on the good basis of the deal we made in July on the last European Council. So we all hope that all challenges for our presidency will be met within much better economic situation than we are facing now.
Prime Minister, thank you. Let me immediately go to Italy, to Giuseppe Conte. I hope you've been able to hear everything, Mr. Conte. Can you, in 45 seconds, give me your sense of where we're going, where Europe has to go? You've made it very clear that we cannot go back to normalcy.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for the kind invitation. If I can say, if there is a lesson that we learned from the COVID-19 crisis, this is the value of solidarity. Italy, as you know, was the first Western country to be hit, and was hit in a very hard way by the pandemic. Italy and its citizens have shown great resilience and adopted a model of containment that proved useful to many other countries. Italy has also been a leading supporter of European global efforts to fight the pandemic. So the cooperation, in my perspective, my vision, is the key to defeat the virus. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Prime Minister. Let me go to Mr. Morawiecki. Welcome from Poland. 40 years to the day since Solidarity was, since the deal at Stocznia Gdańska. I was there. An extraordinary day, and I saw the Solidarność label up there. But your reflection, you've had a big presidential election this year, your reflection in 45 seconds of where Europe is now and the massive challenges facing Europe.
Yes, indeed, we experienced today a very special day for Poland and I believe for the whole of post-communist world, because this was with the Solidarity movement where the collapse of the communist system really started. But this leads me to a different reflection that for 30 years later, post the transformation began, when the transformation began, we still have a very peculiar and idiosyncratic approach and situation in Central Europe. So we have to maintain our unity, our solidarity within Central Europe. And also, as President of Slovenia mentioned in his opening speech, we have to, at the same time, be part of the European Union. So this 3Cs dimension and Central European dimension, so different from the rest of Europe, does not mean that we are against anybody. But we have our own problems, and we have to take care of our problems.
Dziękuję. Thank you very much indeed. Viktor Orban, Prime Minister of Hungary, 45 seconds, please. Where is Europe today, in your view? Because there are many who are concerned about what's happening in your country.
That's my answer.
In trouble.
In trouble because we haven't identified our new position in the global economy. Now it's difficult psychologically for the Europeans to understand that we are not anymore game changers. The game changers are China and United States, because the science center of the modern economy is related very much to the armies. And because we don't have a European army, we don't have scientific center to be in the forefront of technological advancement. So that's the reason why Europe has to understand that we are not, in the first place, no game changer. We have another position, and we have to clarify clearly what is it and what are the consequences of it.
Right, I'm going to pause for a moment because for time reasons, we're running a bit later than we expected. I need to go to Sofia, to Kristalina Georgieva. Nice to see you, Kristalina, welcome. Because we need to hear from you the framing that you want to put. I heard you on the 3rd of June, the launch of the Great Reset at the World Economic Forum, saying there's still a danger of a great reversal. And that's what you want to overcome at the IMF. What are the parameters now? What is the data looking like? Because you said we've got to be optimistic. Can you be optimistic? One moment, let's get...
Wonderful. Wonderful to see all of you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Okay, great. First and foremost, many thanks to Prime Minister Janša for bringing us all, even some of us unfortunately being just on a screen. Nick, the very last time you and I have communicated, it was on the issue of thinking the unthinkable. And I hear you saying it, you engage with people on this scene as well. Came very handy this year because the unthinkable happened. Because of a pandemic, we had to put the world economy in a standstill and triggered the worst recession since the Great Depression, which is unfortunately still with us. So you asked me about the numbers, the data, how we frame our thinking. Our projections are as follows. For advanced Europe, we expect around minus 10% growth this year. For emerging Europe, minus 6%. This is in a global context in which by the end of the year, 170 countries would be poorer than they started 2020. But we do have a reason to stay optimistic. And let me make my case for it. First and foremost, a crisis like no other has generated a response like no other, and that's you and the leaders all over the world. What has been done is phenomenal. We have collectively put a floor under the world economy by pouring huge amount of liquidity through central banks and through actions of finance ministries. For the year up to now, some $11 trillion of fiscal stimulus has been put in place. And that has been done really, really fast. From the IMF, we have done our part. We have moved financial lifelines to 75 countries within 3 months. Never in the history of the fund we have done so much so fast. We have about $1 trillion lending capacity. We have extended 270 billion, of which more than a third just in this last month. Still, we have firepower. And I want people to take pride of this incredible response, because if we didn't do it, there would have been a massive wave of bankruptcies, and by now we would have been in massive turning into structural unemployment. Hasn't happened.
But can I put it to you, Kristalina, that this is more than money. This is about now the resilience of society. All this before the climate emergency.
Yep. You're absolutely right. I mean, I'm saying this only because I sometimes find us being less receptive of what we are learning action actually means. We do have now a chance to generate funding for a second stimulus. And this second stimulus has to be, Nick, exactly about what you're talking right now. It has to be about investing in digital, investing in resilience, meaning education, skills, capacity, to weather what inevitably would hammer us even more, climate. And very important, investing in the fairness of our societies. I heard Victor talking about the need to have a sound foundation of research, which includes, in his words, it includes military research that has been globally important to drive also civilian improvements. Yes, but I think it is also critical to think about the ability to retain a sense of fairness, because on the other side of this crisis, what is waiting? More debt, more deficit, certainly more poverty, and potentially more inequality. And that would translate into more protests, more people saying, we are not happy with you.
Now, you have urged for the last few months a new spirit of solidarity. Do you really think that there is a new spirit of solidarity? Because you've used 3 key words: greener, smarter, fairer, when every country and most people are thinking of themselves rather selfishly.
You know, it's true that every nation, when hit by such a dramatic crisis, would have the natural tendency to say, I'm retreating behind my borders, I'm retreating behind the walls of my house to be safe. But I think that most urgent sense of let's protect ourselves individually has passed. And the EU has proven this by passing the Next Generation EU 750 billion package. By the way, in Europe, because it is so painful to reach a collective conclusion on anything, you remember the pain. Outside of Europe, people were very excited by what you have achieved, because it is an indication that solidarity is still alive and kicking. We are now seeing a revival of trade. We need that very much, because trade is an engine of growth, and it means jobs for people who badly would need that. And it is absolutely paramount that institutions like mine drive this coming together. So far, the fund membership, 189, has been pretty good to stand by those who need to be helped in this crisis. We tripled our capacity to do it.
Final question, if I may then, because I know you've got to go to a meeting at the top of the hour. Is there globalization? Is there global will on this? Or are you facing real uphill barriers to bringing people together, to creating consensus? Because there is a perception that the globalized system, the multinational system, simply is crumbling at the moment.
Look, unless we admit, honestly, the flaws in our global integration, we are not going to make progress in the future. And what are they? One, it is not true that everybody benefits from globalization. There are winners and there are losers. And unless we figure out what we do for the losers and how they are not losers anymore, we would have a problem. Two, it is also critical to recognize that there has to be some revisiting of what we produce through value chains and what we do need to have produced at home for the security and safety of our citizens. Not possible to be in a world in which one country produces 90% of penicillin. It's just not on. So I am very pragmatically a believer that as long as we recognize the pluses and the risks of globalization, we will be able to keep the world together. And in my experience, honesty about values and risks pays off. We get on the same page and then we succeed.
Kristalina Georgieva, thank you very much indeed for sparing time. I know we've run a bit later than we planned, but thanks for staying with us, and we wish you well. And I look forward to hearing from you in a few months that there is no great reversal, that things are moving forward positively. Thank you for joining us. Right, now let me move on, because I cut short the discussion here, and I'm conscious that Prime Minister Conte as well is in Italy. Let me go to Mr. Babiš first of all. Your 45 seconds, please, on the challenges facing Europe, and then we're going to talk in more depth to all of you. Mr. Babiš.
Concrete plan about our territory, which is connected to safety. So we should take immediately Bulgaria, Croatia, Romania, and Serbia in Schengen. Then we have to discuss about West Balkan. Shall we take them in Schengen? Shall we start to speak about EU? Then army, Viktor mentioned it. We are in NATO. Maybe the members of European members of NATO should discuss about our interest with other members of NATO which are outside of Europe. Then let's speak about economy. Let's speak about internal market. What is the potential? Before COVID was 1.6 GDP, which is about 240 billion euro potential. We have a lot of barriers. Then trade. We need desperately trade agreements. After American elections, United States and others. So, and we need action. We are too slow. If we speak about COVID-19, I don't know why our epidemiologists are not speaking together before they take measures. And second, where is our independence about masks, ventilators, respirators, drugs, and everything? So I was asking my Minister of Health what is going on the level of EU, but I'm not satisfied at all.
Prime Minister, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Too slow. Let me tell you the kind of comments we're getting already. Getting positive sentiment to the President's speech on highlighting our common European principles and underlining the need for strengthening our values. That's getting a lot of positive sentiment. Let me go to Serbia now. Mr. President, you have made very clear that you are not so keen on Europe. You made clear at the World Economic Forum, for example, that Serbia is keen on Europe to a certain extent, but you are watching what is happening with interest. Your 45 seconds of what Europe has done and has not achieved in the last few months, given the scale of challenge there has been. Press that button, yes.
Thank you very much, and I'll be as brief as it is possible. I think that I have always been very clear, and I have always been repeating the same message, which is Serbia is on EU path. We are committed to that, but of course we see that we are not a main topic within the European Union countries, which is very normal, particularly under these circumstances. And you see, I was speaking about something else when we saw each other last time. I was saying that we expected more respect from European Union. Maybe people from European Union expected more respect from outside. We should both do our best to make it better from each of our sides. But I need to say, it's something that we need to do for mutual benefits.
What I said was quoting you at the World Economic Forum to an interview with Euronews. Serbia is not very enthusiastic, just to be clear.
That's true. That's different. Serbia is not very enthusiastic. There are 40% of people that are against our EU accession policy. 40% of people, mainly because they see European Union as an institution, organization that makes more pressure on Kosovo's independence. That's true, but it doesn't matter regarding political leadership decisions. We are on our EU path, and we see many difficulties. And I need to say that we don't belong to those advanced economies. We don't belong to those emerging economies. But we are not going to face even a recession this year. Our growth rate is going to be around 0% this year. We are doing well, and then when people have a bit better situation, they always wait and they always measure it up in a best sense for themselves.
Right.
But we are on EU path, and we'll do our best. We'll do our best to make ourselves better regarding. You have already mentioned that European values, justice and judiciary issues, and everything else. But we expect more respect from European Union as well, and I don't hide it.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. President. Right, let's go to Bulgaria, and then I'm going to go to Mr. Conte in Italy. So stand by. I'll come to you for a longer intervention, if I may. Prime Minister, welcome. I'm sorry, I've got my back slightly to you, but what I want to hear from you in 45 seconds, literally, is your view of...
и вие внимавайте зад ръба.
Be careful because you're standing very close to the edge.
I'm always on the edge.
Да.
I've made a career from being on the edge, so thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. Your 45 seconds of where Europe is at the moment.
Провали ли се света с COVID-19? Провали се. Да, провали се. Имаше ли солидарност? Нямаше.
Well, did the world fail with COVID-19? Yes, it did. Was there solidarity? No, there wasn't.
Бяхме ли неподготвени? Категорично неподготвени.
Were we unprepared? Yes, definitely we were unprepared.
Показахме ли, че дори в условия на война или на пандемия не сме готови? Показахме.
Did we show that we were not prepared in a war or pandemic? Yes, we did.
Март месец ние се пазаряхме една с друга държавите как да пуснем зелените коридори. Надпреварахме се коя държава първа ще затвори границите и всеки се спасяваше сам за себе си.
In March, we were fighting and arguing over the green corridors and which country would be the first one to close its borders, and everyone, each country wanted to save itself.
България беше солидарна, ние произвеждахме медицински облекла, шлемове, маски и на всички, които са поискали в Европа, сме изпратили, включително Германия и Австрия.
Bulgaria showed solidarity. We produced medical equipment, PPE, masks, and we did send equipment to countries in Europe,
so my
including
question
Germany
quickly,
and
if I may, my first question, has Europe learned? Quickly, please.
Не.
No.
Аз го поставих на Европейския съвет, колегите са тука. Ние нямаме единен медицински протокол. Държавите продължават да се лутат с маски, без маски. Нямаме ваксина, нямаме лекарство, нямаме протокол при втората вълна как да действат държавите членки.
Thank you.
And I raised this question at the European Council. We do not have a standard uniform medical protocol. Countries are swaying between whether we should wear masks or not, whether we don't have a vaccine yet, we don't have a drug, so we don't know what to do in a second wave of the
All right,
pandemic.
I'm going to ask you to stop for the moment because what you're saying is no, Europe has not learned. We've heard from Prime Minister Orban that Europe is in trouble at the moment. So let me go to Mr. Conte, if I may, for the next 3 or 4 minutes, if we can, Prime Minister, because you've made it clear that the nationalistic European slogans have really proved unable to provide solutions, and that's been central to the kind of things you were mentioning before we came on the platform.
Yes, we can proudly say that this time the European Union has proven in 4 months, if we consider from March to the historic European Council of last July, to be able to react as a community of interests inspired by shared values and to protect the citizens with concrete actions based on cohesion, solidarity, and responsibility. The European Commission, if you remember, immediately adopted the suspension of the Stability and the Growth Pact and other key measures committed to the research of a vaccine. So the European Central Bank has been making a significant effort to support European economies. And also thanks, I like to underline it, also thanks to the impulse of 9 member states among which Italy and our host today, Slovenia, the European leaders decided to urgently act to protect the single market and to trigger a timely full recovery of the interconnected European economies. Was value chains lie at the heart of the European industry. That's why significant measures were taken, and I am talking about the SURE program, about the pandemic crisis support, and in line with the Franco-German proposal of the 18th of May, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, showed ambition proposing the next generation EU. I mean, the European Commission, the political impulse of the European Parliament set the conditions to reach an historical conclusion of the European Council in July. The way of solidarity, of cohesion, is much more stronger, of course, that a nationalistic response in each country that it cannot be coordinated.
But can I just pick up, Mr. Conte, this point that you've heard from Mr. Orban, you've heard from Mr. Borisov as well from Bulgaria, that really Europe has not acted as decisively and in a unified way that is needed at a time like this. And we've heard remarks right at the beginning of the need for better approaches to risk management and understanding the threat to the Union. Therefore, my question is, picking up what you said at the beginning, we cannot go back to normalcy. We need to transform. Do you think there is a mood for transformation in the right direction or not?
If I can say, if we consider the history of European Union, we can say that the crisis represented sometimes, not always, a powerful input to shape a stronger and more cohesive European Union. I think that we have to act now with this goal in mind. This is a great challenge to give a great impulse for a stronger, more cohesive union.
Do you think there's political will for that, though, Mr. Conte, or not?
Of course, there are a lot of difficulties because if you have a mechanism, a system where the decisions are taken by 27, 28, now 27 countries, you can imagine that the mechanism is very difficult and to manage a political vision, very coordinated, very powerful and strong, it's a little bit difficult. But I think that the path is this one, the way is this one. We have to be a very strong vision in order to manage also the next crisis as this one. Maybe that we will face it, other crises, unprecedented crises like COVID-19, and we need to have this very strong political vision.
All right, for the moment, thank you very much, Mr. Conte. Let me go to Prime Minister Orban. You heard there from Mr. Conte that what he said is the nationalistic anti-European slogans have proved unable to help provide solutions. Now, many are concerned that Hungary has made it more difficult to get consensus through the crisis and is going to make it even more difficult because of the way you've handled things and the way you've centralized power and removed certain parts of a liberal democracy. What do you say to what we've just heard from the Italian Prime Minister?
If you have a correct measurement, the Hungarian democracy is at least as good quality than the German one or the Italian one. So I don't see the basis of that argument at all.
But what about the concerns about what you have done? You have centralized issues in Hungary, which has made it very difficult to hear other voices. And we've heard that the nationalistic anti-European slogans are making it difficult for Europe to be able to handle the enormity of what is now facing. It's an existential challenge in many ways.
If you are looking for where are the difficulties which make us unable to find proper answers, it's not in the capitals of the member states, it's in Brussels.
But there are those who say that Hungary has exploited the emergency to change the political system and the democratic system in your country.
No, the Hungarian system is a European system, constitutional-based parliamentary and democracy, like the majority in Europe.
But legal change...
Boringly look like the other. Anyway.
But I'm putting to you what the concerns are about Article 2 and so on, that legal changes are going far beyond reaction to a pandemic.
No, the point is that the treaty of the European Union is very simple and clear. If any member state has any dispute with any European institution, they have to go to the court, the European court. And we always do that. So we don't have problem of the dispute settle mechanism of the European Union.
But what about the state of danger being over, and you've now encompassed much of what you introduced into an omnibus bill in Parliament?
Hungary did the job relatively well. It worked. The government made the proper decisions at the right time, in due course. The Parliament supported it, so it's a boring parliamentarian democracy.
What kind of Europe, though, does Hungary want? Because there are those who say that you are challenging the very core principles, which is going to make the next few months and years very difficult.
Okay, so the first what I have mentioned is a historical dimension. So the fact is that when the Bled summit was established, the investment in the global economy was produced, as far as I remember, 81% from the West, and it was just 18% from the East. Today, the figure is that 58 is coming from the East as global investment of the global economy, and only 40 from the West. So the fact is that, historically speaking, the fight for good technology, we are not on the winning track. Because if you would like to have the best technology of the world, you need a kind of military background, because all important technologies are coming from military science background. And Europe is totally out of that competition. That's my first observation historically. On security, I share the point of some others that without enlarging the European Union and accepting Serbia as full member, we cannot complete the security architecture of Europe. That's the second. The third one is economy. How the European economy could be competitive again. Because unfortunately, as the figures tell us, we are not as competitive as we were and we should. So these are the major challenges. The problem is not the member states and the political system of the member states, intentions of the member states. The problem is that we don't have strong common policies on the three major areas: global competition, good economies, and security enlargement issue.
I'm going to go to Mr. Morawiecki at the moment, who's very much emphasized the importance of democracy in all of this. But let me put to you bluntly that you're stamping out dissent. You're undercutting the power of opponents and demonizing minorities, and those are not the European Union principles. And that's why we're having this discussion, which is a divergence which is taking place.
The fact is that in Hungary we haven't experienced the same democratic one as everywhere in Europe. I don't understand exactly the facts you have mentioned. But it's not a forum about Hungary, but that would be probably another interesting story. But I think the Hungarian democracy is fulfill all the requirements which is general in the European Union. So I don't accept the point that Hungary is something special in that respect. What's going on in Hungary, more than in some other countries, but that's not exactly the same topic as we have today, is a kind of fight for intellectual sovereignty. So we don't have the same understanding what is the relationship between the Christian democratic conservative thinking and concept of democracy and the liberal ones. That's another issue. And we are fighting for the sovereignty to have a conservative and Christian democratic approach to the European institutions and the politics as such. That was, the case prior to the fight, the unified fight of the liberals and conservatives together against the totalitarian regime. But prior to that, that kind of political philosophy was two different philosophies. So we would like to get back to the age intellectually when we can dispute clearly the main values like family, nation, culture, tradition, religion, migration. So we would like to have not just one single concept which must be accepted by everybody, because we don't have a liberal concept to that. We have Christian democratic concept to all these issues. But it's not about the practical political life of every day, it's more about the philosophy of political thinking.
All right, well, there are many people who would challenge what you've just said, but let me go to Mr. Morawiecki, because you've underpinned the importance of democracy. You've talked about a time of great struggle and consequence. We need to brace ourselves for an even more important battle. Now, you've highlighted this very, very explicitly. And our globalized world is facing undue influence from authoritarian nations at Europe's expense. What do you mean by that?
Well, first, there is a role for a sovereign state and there is a role for the European Union. So to the comments which were made by my colleagues, I would say that sovereign states reacted very quickly, and in particular sovereign states in Central Europe, and this is why Central Europe was much more successful in terms of with regard to fighting coronavirus than some others. And then there was a role for the European Union, and there was good negotiation in July about the package, and the package will probably kick in somewhere 2021. So had we not done our sovereign state job, we probably be in the middle of nowhere in terms of the European Union altogether. So we have to understand the two dimensions. With regard to the democracy, liberal democracy, and the others, we have to focus on, and the other topics, we have to focus on specific issues rather than blaming some countries. Well, my personal opinion is that there is a blame on Central Europe because Central Europe is on the rise. The Visegrad countries.
Who is blaming Central Europe?
Well, like some other capital cities and Brussels. It's on the rise, so we become more and more competitive. We are competitors to the others. Competition is good, by the way. So to all our friends all over the world, and in Europe in particular, who think that we should be suppressed because we create competition, I think we should be, our answer should be, competition internally within the European Union is good because through this, the whole of the European Union becomes more competitive. And this is where the global politics comes into play. By the way, I have to mention Belarus these days because for all of people who would like to indicate at some deficiencies in democracy in Central Europe, I completely reject it. Not only in contrast to Belarus, what is happening, and comparing this to the Central Europe, but also being very specific, like freedom of speech, freedom of media. In Poland, by the way, 80% of media is in the hands of the opposition, so I don't know how more free the media could be. The third, freedom of manifestations and demonstrations. I see some happenings in Western Europe where there is police beating people brutally, and this is all democracy and all is fine. And when there are peaceful demonstrations in Prague or in Warsaw or in Budapest, things are wrong in the eyes of the others. So, sir, please be more just and objective and based on facts. Fact-based treatment and fact-based discussion is I understand, the backbone of our internal European discussion.
As Prime Minister...
And one more observation, which is missing from the discussion internally in the European Union. Well, there was one Bloomberg, which is mainstream agency, I understand, commentary 2 or 3 years ago, how Western capital colonized Eastern Europe. Fine, okay, we got colonized in the 90s, in the noughties until 2020. And 4% of Polish GDP goes in the forms of dividend to Western Europe. Okay, that's freedom of capital. But when the Central European companies, small and mid-sized companies, try to fight on the European market, single European market, we got hit back by some by some directives, like mobility package, like delegated workers, and by the way, freedom of delivering services is completely not yet fulfilled in the European Union. So all the freedoms which are very much in favor of richer countries are more or less completed. Freedom of movement of people, capital, and goods. And the fourth one, which is freedom of delivering services, providing services, is not so much completed, and this is this freedom through which the whole of the competitiveness of the European Union could be risen, could be lifted, and this is where Central European countries could more quickly catch up with the
Prime Minister,
with the
let me ask you one final question. You've just had a presidential election where the president was re-elected by a very narrow majority. He's therefore remained in power, but there was clearly a significant pushback. What are you reading into the division now within Poland? Clearly the electoral division. Because what we have is a number of capitals here, a number of countries where there is real pushback. You've got it here in Slovenia on Friday nights. You've got it in Bulgaria as well. You've had it in the Czech Republic. What are you reading? What have you politically taken away from that? The fact that there is division.
Nothing really so much new for me. This came not as a surprise, frankly speaking.
But what
because
does it tell you?
5 years ago, when we came to power, we were against the most important groups of interest in Poland. Okay, so we were attacked from all over the place: media, business, foreign centers, and so on. And I try to be realistic. I understand all those attacks, but we've done a lot for Polish citizens and to build Central European unity together with Visegrad, together with Lithuania today, and so on. And this is the base for our success. So there is not a surprising polarization, sir. For me, it's normality in the context of democracy. We've done this against all odds, all the brutal attacks from foreign media, foreign centers of power, from internal groups of interest, and this is why I'm so happy that the last 4 elections, municipal, European parliamentary elections and presidential elections, were won by us, despite all odds, which should be an indication to you and to many other commentators, and you should not comment it as populist, nationalist, and so on. It's simply a different approach to post-communist world. I was fighting during the Solidarity times for freedom, democracy, and rule of law. And I don't want to be stigmatized by some people because they try to exercise their politics through such statements.
Mr. Plenković, on this issue, given that you've just been the presidency of the European Union, particularly the disappointment of the Croatian presidency for not taking a firmer stand on the issue of where there are clear voices of dissent within certain countries which are not being given the right voices. In other words, there was a feeling that there was an upending of democracy in several countries of Europe, and that Croatia should have taken a much firmer stand as the presidency, and a disappointment that you weren't able to do that.
I have to admit, I haven't noticed such a disappointment. There were 2 processes which were mentioned in between the lines by my 2 colleagues. One of them initiated by the European Parliament, the other one initiated by the Commission. Everything which was necessary for the presidency to undertake was undertaken. I simply didn't feel it, I didn't hear it, nobody actually gave any signal that we didn't do something which we were supposed to do.
Because when it comes to unity and solidarity under the acquis, particularly concerns about Article 7, I mean, you're familiar with the kind of things which are being said, and a sense that there wasn't that unity of direction, that solidarity of direction, which Croatia could have led on as the presidency. What should we read into that about the way Europe is going to be able to handle not just the departure of the United Kingdom, gone from the European Union, but also the very, very complex epidemiological, medical, and economic issues which are now confronting the European Union?
Well, 5 days after our presidency, we had a convincing victory at the parliamentary elections. And our platform was very much pro-European, sharing the European values. This is the agenda I have been personally pursuing for 3 decades, if you like. And I have never seen any signal that something was wrong in terms of our values or policies. On the contrary. What I feel is critical now that you're mentioning it, what we should do in the months which are ahead of us, based on the lessons learned from first, let's say, 8 months of COVID crisis management, is to strike the right balance between the national measures, because if you look back, we all had a national reflex. We demonstrated the importance of the role of the state. After a few weeks and months, we realized we need a common European response, even a global response together. And I think this is going to be the challenge, because we don't know the measures or the dimensions of this possible second wave of COVID-19. We see now that mortality is lower, but numbers are rising. So let's see how we shall adapt to the changing weather conditions. If it's colder and the air is going to be more, I wouldn't say as humid as it is during the summertime, then we might have a problem. And this is where we need to strike the right balance of the European activity and the national measures. This is the key challenge.
Let me put this point to you, which builds on that. Given your experience of what you've been through since February, since what happened in Italy, and now you're going through it in Croatia as well. A comment from Petri Claudio Platon. We have to think and to evaluate the possibility to transfer competencies from the national level to EU level in the field of health and emergency situations in order to have a unified and appropriate response to pandemics, and with competencies transferred at EU level. What's your reflection on whether there's actually a national mood to go that far?
I don't think that the health ministers ever met so intensively as they did during our presidency. I think they met every 3 or 4 weeks. This was the most intensive video conferencing of all the formations of the Council.
But the competences remained national at that time.
Absolutely, but I think there is a clear consensus. If we have a pandemic of such a magnitude, we need to ensure the common effort for the cure, for the vaccine, for the public procurement of medical equipment, for finance and the means to finance all of this. I think there is a general mood that we should do more together. That requires, of course, the change of the treaty, but I think the general mood that we are all open to that.
There is a mood of being open to that, you're thinking?
Well, I think we need a common response. It's so clear. It's absolutely clear we need a common response.
Prime Minister Janša, what's your reflection on how European the mood can be, to pick up what we've heard from Prime Minister Orban, to hear what we've just heard from Croatia, what we've heard from Poland as well, and Serbia?
Well, actually I think that the real challenges ahead of Europe are much different than those issues we are speaking about now. This is my
put the three challenges.
This is my real concern, you know, because if we look back at the spring and this pandemic time and so on, I spoke with all my colleagues across Europe, leaders from the Brussels institutions. You know, nobody spoke about Article 7. But speaking about Article 7, this is a part of the treaty, as Victor said. Europe put into Lisbon Treaty mechanism how to solve the disputes, which are obvious, they will come, and we all respect them. This is so-called rule of law. But what's very dangerous is using double standards. Nick, I'm sure you were here 6 years ago at the Bled Strategic Forum.
Indeed.
Yeah. This Bled Strategic Forum of 2014 was organized in Slovenia, where a few months before the event, elections were stolen. And you all pretended nothing happened at that time. So these are double standards. We had political prisoners. I'm a live example of it at that time. Nobody spoke about rule of law in Slovenia at that time. There is no political prisoners in Poland, in Czech Republic, in Serbia, in Croatia, in Hungary, and whole so-called left liberal press in Europe is speaking about the rule of law.
But what about the public response? The public in the end votes for people like you, votes for every government here. That's a central principle. What about the fact that the public has the ability to say, we don't like the way national governments are handling a crisis? You say there are 3 other big points, but a central part of what's come out of the Commission.
Yes, Nick, but which public? public represented
voters.
by journalists, yeah.
I'm talking about
public
voters.
represented by voters, they have their say. They elect their governments. We are all elected. We are first responsible to our people, to our voters.
But I think we heard from your foreign minister very clearly that the public takes a view, much more specifically, accountability to the public, and that in its own way reflects the view of Europe. And I'm therefore trying to get from you, in advance of the Slovenian presidency, where you think there will have to be significant movement forward in order to keep the public on side. That's been at the heart of the Commission's work in the last 6 months.
Nick, from the times of the ancient Greek democracy, we all know that real public, which matter, are voters. No NGOs or whatever. Public is artificially created to fulfill this void. So going far, or beyond what the real democracy is I think, really dangerous, democracy itself and also the European project, especially if also double standards are used. So there is no such thing as general public which should influence. There are voters which should influence their through or by their direct vote. This is democracy.
Let me move on to President Vučić, if I may. I gather you've got a phone call in a very pressing time. So
I'm a small guy. I'm getting a call from Angela Merkel. And
you what? You what?
I'm a small guy. And I'm getting a call from Angela.
I've been told you have to take a call in a moment.
Yes.
When you look at this as an aspirant, you're not sure if it's going to be 3, 5, or 7 years. You've made very clear. You're not sure what's going to happen when. But when you look at this, the way the European Union has adapted and also responded, you are in the waiting room, and you have been for some considerable time. Does what you see encourage you when you look at the enormity, the economic enormity, as well as the medical enormity of what all of us are facing? Most of us, I'm not wearing, neither are you, a face mask at the moment, but we're all having to be desperately cautious. In order to get back to London, I've got to go through Frankfurt and wait 9 hours because there aren't any planes. It's this kind of change of normality that we're seeing, and whether Europe has responded well enough, whether you in Belgrade are responding well enough to it.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me here, and would like to say just a few words on this. And I think that people in Europe are interested in different issues, not only to those issues that are always mentioned by so-called liberal press, and nothing but that. It's first of all, I learned something from my friends here, and I always learn from them. And I learned one very important thing from either Andrzej, either Victor, I don't know who out of two of them said it to me. It's always better belonging to club than not belonging to club. And I'll just mention one example. At the beginning of this crisis, I was the stupidest guy of the world saying that there is a lack of solidarity in Europe. And entire Europe attacked me immediately. All the medias throughout the continent attacked me because I said something that was very obvious. You see, today it was mentioned by my great friend Boyko Borisov. No one will make a single comment on that because he's a member of club and he's not the first one that is mentioning that. And these are these double standards. I'll mention the other example. We had a big attempt, and it was not an attempt, they did it. Some people stormed the national parliament in Belgrade. And then we reacted, we intervened. And altogether there was 27 people arrested. 27 people arrested at that day. And all of them were released after a day, or most of them. And then you had just an attempt of doing the same thing in Germany. And they arrested 300 people. And they beat them severely. But yes, we live in a dictatorship, and that's a proof of democracy. And these kind of double standards, that's something that you have to react on. And you saw all the people, you asked them whatever you wanted, they were keen to respond to you with no problems, with no even passion. And speaking about European Union, yes, we would like to belong, we would like to join the club. We have a lot of support from European Union. We have never underestimated support that we have gotten so far from European Union. But at the same time, you know, we have our own thoughts. We see what is happening within European Union. We see what is happening between US and European Union. Now at least we have to deal with both with Americans, with Europeans on Kosovo issue. I don't know. Of course, we say political status, it's something that we should deal under the auspices of EU, but economically speaking, we deal with Americans as well. If we avoid doing something with Americans, then we'll have Americans as, I cannot say as our enemies, but as our opponents, which we don't want to see, and at the same time, you have the same approach from European Union. And what we expect, and I heard great ideas today, it's a geopolitical approach from European Union. That's what we expect, that's what we hope. That's what we hope for. And we think that Serbia belongs to Europe, and we think that we need Europe, including everything that you have said today regarding European values, efficient and independent justice and judiciary, and everything else, but also including better life of our citizens, including peace and stability that will be guaranteed to our people, but respect has to be shown to our people, because you see, when I said last time, and you were here, and I'm saying this today, even it's a bit worse situation, people are not enthusiastic. It's not a topic of our election campaigns. And we won predominantly.
There was an article on Friday in Prospect saying that there's false Europeanism in Serbia.
You know, there are many articles that you can quote here. I think that we should do our best to raise the numbers, to raise the popularity of European Union, and to emphasize more the contribution of European Union to the development of our economy, to the development of our political system. But on the other side, there are many things within European Union to be changed when we speak about their relationship towards Serbia.
I'm not sure if you have to leave, but I have a note saying you do have a call with a rather important European capital shortly. We have 15 minutes to run, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. President. We have a maximum of 15 seconds, and I'm conscious, Prime Minister Babiš, that you need to cut.
Can I have one more minute, please?
Of course, you need to come in, and also Mr. Borisov as well.
Look,
so I'm telling you what where the time parameters are at the moment.
You have given me 45 seconds.
I'm coming to you now.
And Giuseppe, he has the same voice like we have, all of us. One.
Go ahead.
The European Council. Giuseppe, hi. So, give me 1 minute. I came here because my colleagues told me that we are going to discuss about Europe after COVID and Brexit.
That's where we are.
No. I didn't came here to discuss V4 and rule of law. I don't know who you are, but I know that your questions are based on fake news for Guardian and Spiegel and the other anti-V4 newspapers. We have discussed 4 hours in Brussels. No, we have discussed 4 nights and 4 days, but about the rule of law, 4 hours, all of us here, all of us. And it was clarified. So why we are discussing rule of law? You are speaking about Czech Republic. What do you know about Czech Republic? My profession is businessman, crisis manager, actually Prime Minister of Czech Republic. I won 6-time elections. And we have results before. Best in COVID results, growth, lowest unemployment we are now in Europe. Number 4 in debt, Boyko is better than me.
but we are number 4. I was Minister of Finance, I decreased the debt from 41.5 to 30, okay? So, I mean, your questions, rule of law, and so on, don't read this fake news, please. V4 is doing very well. And during one discussion, by the way, we can speak about migration, illegal migration. We are against illegal migration. In Czech Republic, we are taking 60,000 people from abroad to work. Everybody is coming on permission. So we have ideas in Europe. I am for strong Europe. I have a lot of ideas how we can help Europe. So please, I am very much surprised about this discussion because...
Well, right, give us the top 3 ideas for Europe now. Because
I have a lot of ideas, yes. And you know what is the most important in life? If you realize your ideas.
3 ideas.
And I was upset by the corruption in Czech Republic. I made a company from nothing, 4 employees to 35,000 employees. One of the biggest in Central and Eastern Europe. And then I went to politics. I regret it every day. This stupid decision. Different world. I know what is action. I know what is crisis management. When your chemical plant explodes, or you have the flood, and you have the factory under 3 meters of water, then you have to act quickly. Speed, decision. And it was during COVID-19, we act, Czech Republic act. We were one of the best.
Prime Minister, can I give you 1 minute?
Yeah, so please don't speak about V4. Don't read all this fake news.
I'm not. We could have a long discussion about that, but I'm not going to have a discussion.
We can discuss after if you want.
What I'd like to do, and that's what we're here for, is
you know
to hear from you.
What Victor said one night, Victor? He said, when we enter EU, we thought that this is the future. Now, this reason is the future of Europe. A lot of people are coming to live in Czech Republic. We are one of the safest countries in the world.
I'm just challenging you before I go to Mr. Borisov.
I take care about Europe. I know how to save Europe.
Okay, what has to be done in the next few weeks then?
I told you about Schengen, about trade, internal market, action. Where is the strategy? West Balkans, our friend Zoran Zaev. We promised him we shall start to discuss.
But I should be asking all of you, is Schengen in jeopardy because of the kind of thing...
But Boyko is defending better the borders than some of our colleagues.
But at the moment...
In Schengen. And Zoran Zaev was defending our border.
Hungary is about to impose new travel restrictions from tonight because of COVID. But therefore, I'm putting on the agenda, we haven't got time to talk about it, that Schengen is at risk at the moment because of the difficulties of travel.
Look, Schengen, ask Boyko how he defends the border, or Andrej Plenković. When I have been Minister of Finance and I came by the boat to Dubrovnik, I was waiting 2 hours with my diplomatic passport to get out from the boat. And what about the other border? You know, I'm always speaking about Asterix and Obelix village. And this village should be on the sea. And that's why we have this territorial strategy of Schengen and West Balkans. If we don't make it this village on the sea, then we will have the border where?
All right.
And Serbia left already.
Let me go to...
And Schengen is about safety, defense of Europe. I am very much pro-European.
Thank you. Mr. Borisov, let me come to you for your final comments, because we've got less than 10 minutes, and I'm going to go to Mr. Conte briefly as well. When you look at what you've heard here, and I have to say there's been a lot of negative traffic saying that from your country about your own position, but we can leave that. High traffic attacking you, according to the notes that I've received here. But where do you see the future? The future of Europe is not about 10 or 20 years. This is about 10 or 20 weeks, 10 or 20 months, because of the urgency of so much, as we've heard from Madame Georgieva at the IMF.
Няма по-добро място от Европейския съюз.
There's no better place than the European Union.
Европейската комисия свърши много работа.
The European Commission did a lot of things.
Но сме септември. Идват зимните грипове.
But it's September almost. We are going to have the flu.
Има миграционна вълна. която също разнася COVID.
There is a migration influx that also spreads COVID.
Има чудовищен спад на брутен вътрешен продукт в цял свят.
There's a dramatic drop in GDP all over.
Предлагам да създадем спешно медицински щит.
I suggest we urgently set up a medical shield.
При червен код всички държави членки действат по един начин. При жълт код, при зелен код.
So when the code is red, all EU member states should act in a uniform way.
Освен хилядите човешки животи, които загубихме,
we lost thousands
парите, които загубихме,
lives, also money,
работните места, които загубихме.
Jobs.
Ние загубихме най-важната битка за психическото здраве на хората.
But more than that, we lost the most important fight, and that is the fight over the mental health of our people.
Всеки човек сутрин се събужда с мисълта дали има сигурност.
Everybody wakes up in the morning thinking about they feel secure.
Ние какво им казваме всеки ден? Идва втора вълна, която ще е по-лоша от първата.
And every day we are telling people that a second wave of COVID is coming on and it's going to be worse than the first one.
Протести и бунтове в цяла Европа. Защо? Защото не знаят има или няма. Ние още спориме. Има или няма COVID-19.
There are demonstrations all over Europe because people don't know whether there is COVID or not. We are still arguing about this.
Не може ли единния медицински протокол да каже от 1 септември всички училища, детски градини, спортни прояви в Европейския съюз на държавите членки се разрешават, забраняват или провеждат по какъв си начин?
I think we should have a uniform medical protocol which would say, let's say, from the 1st of September, all schools in Europe, sports events will be open or not.
Всяка държава членка е длъжна да осигури зелен коридор и трафик за тировете за транспорта.
Every member state should provide a green lane for the trucks, for transportation.
И така нататък, и така нататък.
And so on and so forth.
Държавите членки трябва да имат 100 милиона облекла, ваксини, лекарства, глобално да го направим целия Европейски съюз за всяка държава членка.
Member states should have personal protective equipment, vaccines, drugs.
А на вашия въпрос, България се справи с миграцията, България влезе в банковия съюз, в чакалнята на еврозоната, справи се най-добре и с пандемията, имаше най-висок ръст на брутния вътрешен продукт, докато дойде коронавируса до февруари, бяхме втората държава по най-нисък външен дълг в Европа.
And back to your question, Bulgaria handled very well the pandemic. We entered ERM, the waiting room. Also, we had, until February this year, we had the highest growth of GDP in the European Union. We had the lowest foreign debt.
Строят се всички инфраструктурни проекти, включително терминалите за втечнен газ от Гърция към България?
All the infrastructure projects are being developed and at full speed, including the LNG terminals with Greece.
А сме на най-трудното место между Турция, Крим, Черно море.
And we are actually, at the same time, we are located in a very difficult spot between Crimea, Turkey, and the Black Sea.
Could I pause you at that point? We've got 5 minutes left. I'd like to, for all of you, and including Mr. Conte, who I can see still there, I'd like you to define in 30 seconds your vision, because we need to look optimistically, despite everything that we're going through at the moment. Could I ask you to define your vision for Europe in 30 seconds? I'm coming directly to you, Mr. Conte, and can you keep the time short, please?
Thank you. Thank you. In my perspective, EU is a success story and not an elitist utopia distant from citizens. That's why it will be very important, the conference of the future of Europe. This conference should be focused on policies to meet the citizens' needs and reinforce and enforce the role of the EU as a provider of solutions. It will be very important in order to achieve this goal, also accelerate the process of a green and digital transition for all the Europe.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Morawiecki, I think you're flying to Gdansk tonight to celebrate. When I remember being in that shipyard, the idea of Poland being a member of the European Union was for another century almost, but look where you are now. Your 30 seconds of the vision, even with all the bumps, what is achievable and how quickly?
I think first, let's keep transatlantic unity as the most important pillar of our security. And this is not obvious with Brexit, and we have to keep the transatlantic unity and do whatever is possible to have it united. This is a very important pillar. Second, let's have Central European locomotive and engine grow and flourish, because this can be the next locomotive of growth for the whole of the European Union. We are doing fine, as you heard, we are doing okay. Let us do our job. And third, to have this common vision, and this was very much heard throughout the discussion, our discussion, let's truly understand each other, because there are differences, and uravnilovka, as we said about this in the communist world, which is equalizing everything under one measure, does not work. One size does not fit all.
Thank you, Prime Minister. I've had a comment here from Rade Racikovsky. Does the COVID-19 crisis have the capacity to increase European solidarity with greater vision and union? Mr. Orban, your 30 seconds. What is the vision which is achievable and is necessary?
May I have one comment on solidarity? Because the way you use the expression does not help a lot to understand what is solidarity about. Because solidarity means common success, to have a success together. But the question is how we can reach that point. And solidarity does not make unnecessary to make your own homework. So you cannot be successful together if you are not successful one by one on your own. So the first precondition of any solidarity to be successful in your economy, in your country, and then you can cooperate with others and you can be successful together as well. So solidarity is not an expression which could be confronted with national actions, success, and national economy and political successes. So another remark on Poland, that story.
But your vision for Europe.
Yeah, but to understand why you were not able to find a common ground and voice with us during this conversation, it goes back to Poland in '81. Because, the guys who are sitting here, we are all freedom fighters. You are not. So it's not easy for you to understand what does it mean to be freedom fighters. And one of the turning points of my life was that event in Poland 30 years ago.
40 years ago.
40 years ago.
I was there. I was there.
And what was the reason of that? The reason was that the first uprising against, in name of the freedom of Soviet Union and communist dictatorship happened in Hungary, 56, crushed. Then 68 in Czechoslovakia, crushed. And the only nation and event was when after an uprising, the Soviet Union and the communist regime was not able to crush the resistance, was in Poland. And that generated the help and hope for us, even in Hungary, that if there is a country, and there is one anti-communist, anti-Soviet movement, which cannot be crushed anymore, that's the sign of the hope for the future.
Thank you.
That's the reason why we are so freedom fighters, so grateful to Polish people why they raised the flag at that time on Europe. Three points. First, common military defense capacity. Second, enlargement and complete the architecture of security by Serbia. And third, competitive economy with the Central European economic locomotive. These are the three strategic points for future of Europe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Orban. I should just correct you on one thing.
Sorry.
Maybe I'm not a freedom fighter, but I've spent a large number of evenings or days with secret police across many of your countries, and I met you in the 1980s in Budapest. Indeed, that's why I'm sitting on the edge. Mr. Plenković, your 30 seconds for a vision, please, for Europe.
Well, I think that this conversation of today shows that the process of cultural acclimatization to the enlarged Europe, which is a different Europe than the Western capitals and Western leaders knew before 2004 and after 2004, is a process. And I can feel it last 4 years that I've been attending the European Council. I think it will take us some time to see the rising self-confidence of the newcomers. This is the key message, and that the people in the West realize it. But I think despite all of that, we've learned a number of things in this year of crisis. One, we need a strong common European response to the European and even a global problem. And I think that we've managed that. Now we need to fine-tune it to the needs of every single member state, whether it's health or whether it's the economic recovery. The second issue is the global context, which is extremely complex. We are facing the presidential elections in the United States. We are still in the process of Brexit follow-up. We see the changes in our neighborhood. Mateusz mentioned the situation in Belarus. Every single country in the Eastern Partnerships does have one sort of half-active or frozen or low-intensity conflict. So Europe needs to provide solutions and be the leader on a number of issues: security, economy, competitiveness, and at the same time strengthen its internal cohesion. And I think that's why the meeting in July was the right balance. We managed to strike the right balance and even walk into the areas that were uncharted waters. And that means to provide financing for a quick European economic recovery in the years to come. This was essential. This was a novelty, which I think it is actually the vision of today for the next decade.
Thank you very much. Two more comments. Mr. Babiš, your vision, and then finally, Prime Minister Janša.
I have to agree with Mateusz and Victor and Andrei. So we need a clear strategy. We need to act quickly. First, we need to solve Brexit. Then, of course, we need to solve relations with Russia and Turkey. We need to solve the trade deficit with China, trade agreement with the United States, internal market. So there are a lot of goals, and we have to share the competencies because when we speak about transatlantic, then Poland is the closest ally of United States, and they have a potential together with V4 maybe to help to conclude the trade agreement after the US elections.
Right, we're way over time. Literally 30 seconds.
Западни Балкани да бъдат прияти.
The Western Balkans.
Подобряване на отношенията Европа-САЩ.
Better relations between Europe and
Решаване на кризата
USA.
Турция, Гърция, Кипър. Изключително
сериозна
на нашата граница.
Greece, Cyprus, which is very important, threatening the borders.
Thank you very much indeed. Final word, Prime Minister.
Thank you. On long term, I think we still have to fulfill the dreams of founding fathers of the European Union, or the people marching in Solidarność protest 40 years ago, Europe whole and free. On middle term, my colleagues counted all things we have to do, from Schengen to European army security. On short term, winter is coming, and our main concern, all of us, is how to keep our people safe, our economy working and alive, our trade alive, and how to prepare best for possible next epidemic or pandemic. And this is one of our priorities during our presidency next year.
Who knows where we'll be in July next year?
Yeah.
Prime Minister, given what has happened in the last 6 months. Can I thank you all very much indeed, and grazie tanto as well to Prime Minister Conte. Thank you very much indeed for joining us and staying with us throughout the whole process. So thank you very much indeed. And let me turn my back on the guests and say thank you very much to you as well. There is one comment here. Are the divisions within the countries represented on the stage endangering the concept of a united Europe? Can I thank you all for your patience as well, and ask you to stay where you are, because the foreign policy of the European Union and Europe is going to be examined. Bethany Bell from the BBC is going to be up here, so stay where you are. The lights will go up, I hope. But thank you very much indeed for your attention, your patience, and I hope we've at least highlighted the enormity of what both the British decision on Brexit and also COVID-19, the realities, the sinister realities of COVID-19, how they've acted as a spur for change, transformation, innovation, but also for concern as well. Thank you all very much.